This story happened 3 years ago. First, I want to start off by saying that I'm a femboy with long blonde hair and crystal blue eyes. I always get mistaken for being an actual girl due to me being 5'5" and very petite. Anyway, I work the graveyard shift at Sonic's, along with 3 of my friends, which I'll name Mike, Robbie, and Charlotte for this story. We also had a shift manager that monitored our shifts and assigned us breaks and whatnot. It was around 11 p.m. and we were about to close in another hour. The shift was really slow, and there was really nothing to do other than redo everything we'd already cleaned. Our shift manager, being the laid-back woman she was, said that we could do whatever, but we would have to come back immediately if we began to pick up on orders. Really, she only said this so she could go out back to smoke a cigarette and scroll through her Facebook. Robbie and Charlotte decided to sneak off, knowing that our manager wouldn't return back inside until it was closing time. So they took Robbie's car and drove off, saying they'd be back before our manager even noticed. This left only Mike and I alone in the store. After a while, I noticed something on one of the monitors. A man just stood there. He was extremely tall and lanky. It was like his arms were extremely long, though I could be exaggerating. His skin did a horrible job on covering the bones underneath. His eyes looked like they were going to pop out of his skull, and his teeth didn't fit in his mouth. He just stood there, swaying side to side. It was like his body moved, but his head and neck didn't move with it, even though they were attached. Well, I was completely freaked out, and Mike just laughed, saying he must be stoned. I laughed it off too, but only to make me feel better. It didn't. Because he didn't have a car, my headset didn't connect to the speaker that allowed me to speak to him. He stood there for about another 5 minutes before he walked away. I felt a relief hit me as I saw him walk off the monitor, but I couldn't celebrate for long. Mike had asked me to blow him, and I was down for it. That was until there was a beep coming from a stall, which meant someone pressed the red button and wanted to order. Before I was able to do my sonic greeting, I was already greeted with jagged breathing. It sounded like someone trying so desperately to breathe for air, or as Mike would explain it, someone with a slit throat. I gathered up the courage and spoke. "Welcome to Sonic. Order when you're ready." I was just greeted by heavy breathing. I felt all the hair stand up on my arms. I repeated it again in case he didn't hear me. Just more breathing. After a while, I just hung up because I was getting freaked out. It was 11:30 p.m. by now, and Mike and I began to gather our stuff together due to it being almost home time. We both heard the back door open and close, and we figured it was just Robbie and Charlotte sneaking back in before our manager came back to say we could clock out now. "You guys are early," Mike called back there. No response. "You guys back there?" Mike called. Still no response. I could see Mike getting irritated. He marched back there while saying, "Hey, I'm speaking to you guys. Mike got quiet. I went to him to figure out what the hell was going on back there. As I stood next to Mike, I saw why he went quiet. It was that man from outside. He'd gone through the door our manager usually cracked open so she didn't get locked out while out in the back. He just stood there, staring, his eyes wider than ever. White stuff bubbled from his mouth. He pulled out something from his back pocket. It was a knife. Mike and I were both frozen, not knowing what to do. The man pulled up his sleeve, revealing his extremely long and bony arm. He then begins cutting himself, while making that same gasping noise along with a blood-curdling scream. He screamed so loud, I screamed, in shock. Then he turned and limped toward the door, one leg walking while the other leg dragged behind. Mike and I just stood there. It wasn't long before Charlotte and Robbie walked in, filling the silence with their laughter. They looked at the terrified look in our eyes, and we immediately told them everything. At first, they didn't believe us, but I guess the tone and look of our faces showed we weren't lying. Soon, our manager walked in, asking if we were ready to leave. I asked if we could replay the outside tape from an hour ago, and she agreed. As we watched the tape, I was even more stunned at what I saw. There was no man in the drive-thru or standing at the stall. And the creepiest thing? Seeing me and Mike just standing there terrified. at nothing.